You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to The Spirit Dimension with your host, Kerry Greenaway, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome to The Spirit Dimension. My name is Kerry Greenaway, and as always we have a look at a slightly different side of things on a Sunday evening. We try and look at a bit more esoterical, a bit more spiritual. We cover lots and lots of different subjects as well as the paranormal and the supernatural. And tonight I am joined in the studio by the lovely Alyson Dunlop. Good evening, Alyson. How are you?
Good evening. I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really, really well for Sunday.
Good. Nice to talk to you again. Yeah.
So I thought I'd talk to you tonight about angels, because you're an angelologist, aren't you?
Yeah, it's one of my favourite subjects in this paranormal, strange world of ours.
So, okay, angels, are they real, is the question. Are they real or just a belief system?
Well, I think that they're real. I've experienced them. I know other people who have experienced them. And these incidents, I don't think you can put down to anything other than some kind of helpful intervention or knowledge that comes from elsewhere. Now, I know some people might say, well, that might be a spiritual dimension. But I don't know, this belief system seems to, and you're right, it is partly belief, and this belief system does tend to go back into ancient times. So they might have been called something else, but, in ancient Greece, they were referred to as terms like daemons, which is where we get the word demon from. And then you can go into all that, where angels and demons are very, very similar types of beings. That's why I guess we kind of class them and talk about them. And obviously there's been a book written about angels and demons. Yeah. But it is because they're the same type of being. And in ancient Greece, they were differentiated into good daemons and bad daemons, or, I don't know, negative type daemons. But, and some were winged and some weren't winged, the same as we see in artwork today. It is more of an artistic invention, the angel wings, but it just symbolises their ability to come between heaven and earth. Or the other world and earth. And, they are a universal thing as well. This is not just a Western world thing. In whatever culture, whatever religion, they are present. You can see the beliefs and the experiences of people going right back in time. So, for that reason, and they're very enduring because people still believe in them and still have experiences with them today. I'm one of those people. So I would say that very definitely they are real. And when I first had this encounter with an angel, which I think I spoke about this one on the last show that we did, when I was on dialysis and I saw this angel with the wings spread out, it really confused me because I wasn't Christian and I associated these things with Christianity. And so I really didn't know why I should be seeing this or having this experience. But of course, as I looked into it, I realised that it's not just a Christian thing. You know, it's not. It's in Islam, in Judaism, obviously, in Buddhism, in Hinduism, and even in Japanese culture and, you know, Asian cultures or whatever. So you can see that right throughout. But the thing is that I had no particular interest in angels either. I didn't really think about them. They presented themselves to me and have done since then. So to me, they're definitely real. You know, when they have come in to either give a message to me or to someone that I know.
It's all gone to white around here. I do apologise. So the question I have now for you is, I know you've had personal experiences. Is that because when you grow up, we go through the education system and it's done more in a very Christian way, and generally we go through the general education system is brought up in a C of E way, and that is part of that ethos, isn't it? It's, you know, you get taught by the Bible and you learn from the Bible and sort of like that, particularly the age we're at.
Yeah.
So do you think, although you don't follow that now, you have that as a basic subconscious? I'm going to leave that with you and just mute my mic for a second.
Yeah, okay. So I think that you're onto something there with the schools being brought up with this in our culture. And schools do obviously teach us about the Christian religion, or your family might teach you about the Christian religion in the Western world, and hopefully you're getting taught about other religions as well. I know nowadays in school they are teaching kids about all different religions, and they're all we're a more multicultural society nowadays. And but yes, back when I was at school, you know, we did do, like in religious education, I suppose we covered a few different religions, but in primary school it was mostly, well, in school itself we didn't really talk about religion, but we did, like at Easter time and Christmas time, we would get taken to the church for a service, and you know, sing the hymns, which is really the only part of not the only part, but it was the part of church that I particularly enjoyed was singing the hymns. Now, obviously, in those hymns they do mention angels, but that was about the extent of my Christian teaching, to be honest. I was brought up, my family are Protestant. My mum did and does occasionally go to church, but it's not every Sunday. And I would occasionally go with her. But it wasn't forced on me, you know, within the family. I wasn't told that I must go to church, and religion wasn't really spoken about in the home. No. So, as I say, I'm not saying that I came from a non-religious background, but it wasn't heavily influenced by religion. So, you know, it was nothing to do with, I don't think, anything that I had been taught.
Okay.
that might be different for other people, but as far as I was concerned, it was nothing to do with anything I'd been taught.
Okay, so you had, I'm assuming that after you had your experience, you then went into the angelologist side of things.
It developed over a bit of time, really. I was more interested in the demonology stuff to begin with,
Ooh,
following
darker
that.
side.
Yeah. Well, it was only because I'd had that incubus attack, so I was very concerned and interested about what this might have been, going on, what it might have meant. So, yeah, I was learning about that side of things, and still am, actually. I'm doing a course in possession and exorcism just now and learning Latin. So,
Oh, my goodness.
we teach ourselves course doing it at home. So it was, I guess, a bit of a later thing. Gradually, through the experiences, one by one, it was, like you're getting prodded. And actually, that brings to mind another experience where I literally was prodded by what I think was an angel, or certainly some kind of guide. And I was listening to a lecture about angels at the Glasgow Museum of Religion. I don't know if they've still got it on, but they had an exhibition, an angel exhibition. And two lecturers from the University of Glasgow had come along. One was talking about angels in Islam, and the other was talking about angels in Buddhism. And I was sitting there absolutely hooked, absolutely fascinated. And then I got this prod in my side. And I got this message, you should be doing this. And I guess that was the point where I thought, okay. Between that and the Pleiadian experience that we spoke about the last time, I think that was another point where, because I believe that those beings were of an angelic nature as well. So I think the message that I had to tell people about them has brought me to studying them more, and looking at the crossovers, because that's my main area of research just now, is looking at the crossovers between ancient gods and the idea of angels. So, and of course my degree's in classics, so that's why I know about the daemons, and also the archangels, who I think there's probably crossovers with the Olympian gods, possibly, because all these ideas are personifications of, ideas.
Yeah.
That, all of them. So, like the daemons, there would be love and hate, and things like harmony and chaos.
Yep.
And all these things, like with the angels, they all have jobs to do as well. They're all delegated specific tasks. So what led me on to that? I can't remember. But anyway.
Yeah, no, they do though, don't they? I mean, when you look into particularly, the archangels, you've got Michael, Raphael, Ariel. There's loads and loads of them, isn't there? There's like hundreds of them. Made really, really famous actually through Doreen Virtue. She really brought them into the fore on the spiritualist front, didn't she?
That's right. So you've got Michael, who is about courage and strength. Gabriel, who's about communication. Raphael, who's about healing. And then Uriel, whose name means God is my light, or the flame of God, something like that. And that's all to do with wisdom. So you can see these personification in ancient times. But Doreen Virtue, she, I think it was in her book, The Miracles of Archangel Michael, she talks about three particular, characterizations of an angel. So the first one is that they appear suddenly from nowhere. Secondly, they show extraordinary strength. And thirdly, they disappear without a trace before you can say thank you. This has led to people say that they believe that the angels don't like being thanked. I don't think it's that. I think that it's not required, that their job is done and then they leave, and perhaps you before you get to say that. So I don't think it's got anything to do with like or dislike. They just have a task and that's it. So, yeah.
So, because it's now so common in the spiritualist field, from a psychological point of view, with people buying into the different personifications of the angels, has that just built up an energy form? Or has, bearing in mind this has been going on over the centuries, these beings have, been around and been worshipped and been looked at in these ways. Do you think that is more what's happened here with these? Or is there another dimension with angels in them and what we class as demons and stuff like that? Is there an ascended being that can help us on our day-to-day life? Because when I started looking into angels, there were so many different almost classifications. We have the archangels, but then we have guardian angels, and then we have angels of mercy, and then we have angels of crisis, and then we have, everyday angels. There are so many different ways people connect to angels that it kind of got me thinking maybe it was just a psychological personification energy form rather than an ascended.
It's quite possible. It's possible. You can't really rule anything out. I've thought about it before. I'm also very interested in thought forms and things like that. The point is, though, that once something is, a thought form is created, then it does exist. So, but I don't know, there is something a bit different about it, about angels. If you ask for their help, they appear. Thought forms take a lot of energy to create and a lot of time. And quite, from what I understand, and maybe other listeners know something else, but from what I understand about thought forms, tulpas, it takes quite a lot of energy to build that up. Whereas you can ask for angelic help and it happens almost immediately or within a few days, and you're not thinking about it anymore. You just put that thought out. I'm trying to think offhand. Well, there was, let's see. I spoke in my talk at the conference. I spoke about a little boy called Daniel when he was 11. He was on a school trip to France, and they'd visited a few towns, and then they went to this theme park. And it was time to leave, but when he got back in the bus, he realised that he couldn't find his wallet. And it took quite a number of hours going from the theme park to where they were staying in Bologna. It's a city in northern France. And as the bus drew into the city centre, the teacher said, be very, very careful. There's a lot of pickpockets. So it was very, very busy. And the children got out. They wandered around for about 20 minutes. Daniel really didn't know what to do at this point. He was probably quite worried if he should say anything. But out of nowhere, this woman just suddenly walked up to him and said to him, "Is this your wallet?" And there in her hand was the wallet they had lost several hours before, many, many miles away, probably over 100 miles, given that they drove for about 2 to 3 hours, and in a completely different place. And this is a man that I know, and he's got no idea how she knew that it was his or why she singled him out. It's just a total mystery. But both the wallet and the money were returned intact. So, and then he said that when he I guess, turned round to say thank you. She'd disappeared into the crowd, and that was that. Never saw her again. Another incident involved a friend of mine, Ian Shanes. He's a psychic medium. And when he was touring India, and this could tie in with my theory about angels and gods being the same thing. The day of the event, it was at this huge festival in India, and there was elephants with all their fancy attire and jewels. He said that reminded him of Lord Ganesha. He got this image of Lord Ganesha, and he was trying to make his way through the crowd towards a band near the centre, but it just was completely impossible. It was just too busy. And then suddenly this enormous man appeared behind him. He said he was head and shoulders above everyone else in the crowd. And this huge man placed two hands on either of Ian's shoulders, and he recalls that the crowd just parted, and as this man just pushed them through. And when he got to the band at the centre, he turned round to thank this giant. And of course, when he turned round to thank the man, he'd vanished. So although he's a psychic medium, he had believed that this really was he saw this man physically. And then he looked up Lord Ganesha, because he still had this image of elephants and Lord Ganesha, and discovered that Lord Ganesha is also known as the remover of obstacles. Oh. So that's another little story. And a very nice one as well. This happened between a friend of mine and myself. It was in July last year, and I was telling my friend Gillian that I was wanting to write a book on angels, and asked her if she had any experiences. And she said that she believed in angels, she even talked to them, but she didn't know whether or not they heard her. So we were chatting back and forth. This is on Facebook. It wasn't over the phone. Mm-hmm. And suddenly our little boy, Casey, came into the room and said, in surprise, "Mummy, there's an angel behind you." Now, he didn't know what we were talking about. She was on the computer, and she was absolutely gobsmacked. She was truly shocked. But she also said to me when she was telling me, she says, "Oh, he's very much in tune with spirits." And she asked him to describe this angel, and he said that the angel was a woman with wings. She had red hair and a cream dress, and the cream dress looked red because of all the lights behind her. There was coloured lights all around this angelic being. He said that when she got cold, she turned into an ice angel. We're not quite sure what that means, but the angel most associated with the colour red is Uriel, and that fitted both of our situations at the time, because I think it's clear that the angels wanted Gillian to know that they do exist and that they do hear her, whatever thoughts she puts out to them. Mm-hmm. So that was quite momentous. And it was the first time she'd ever been given any confirmation of their presence. So that was quite special.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
The chat room is going a little bit alive. So thank you all for... Yeah, I know. So thank you all for joining us in the chat room, guys. Now, the first point that's been brought up was, how can they be everywhere at once? Are they a bit like omnipotent?
Omnipotent.
Is that the word?
If you believe in omnipotent beings, then yes, that's how they can be everywhere at once.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like God.
Exactly.
He's supposed to be everywhere at once, isn't he?
If that's what you believe, then that's the case.
Yeah.
You could, well, maybe that's not the case, but you could explain it that way. I mean, I don't personally have an answer for why they are or who they are or where they come from. But I guess that does bring us to the point of the concept of time and space. Mm-hmm. It brings us to that, doesn't it? Because I have had an experience which I don't think I've told you about this one. I try not to repeat.
Fine, you carry on.
But if I have, then just jump in and say, yes, you did mention that. And it was a friend of mine. I hadn't seen him for some time, and I suddenly started getting a need that I had to see him. This thought just wouldn't go away, and I hadn't seen him for like 14 years, and this thought just would not shift. It was like something was really pushing me to get in touch with him, and I had this astral projection where I went to his house and I went in his house, and I became quite frantic to try and waken him up. I was pulling back the bedclothes and trying to waken him up. Now, I didn't really know what that was about, but the following year, I did meet up with him, and he told me that in the 14 years since he'd last seen me, and it was probably roughly 6 years before 5 or 6 years before my experience, before that projection experience, he said he'd had a stroke, well, a series of mini strokes, and he'd woken up in the middle of the night with his bedclothes being pulled off him and somebody trying to waken him up. And I'm just like looking at him like with my eyes like saucers, my jaw wide open, going, what? And he said, I think it was my mum. I can only think it was my mum, because he said when he woke up, he realised there was something very wrong, and he managed to get to the phone. He phoned for an ambulance, and when he got to hospital and he was examined, and the doctor said, if you hadn't have got here when you did, you would be dead. So that to me, I did tell him. I told him, I said, I had that experience that I've just mentioned. And he just like stood up and gave me a hug. And I was like, I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah.
Because, so when you're in that other dimension, you can do anything. You can go anywhere at any time, on this earth or in another dimension, possibly. I've not done that yet, but I guess I guess that is another dimension, isn't it? The astral plane is in itself another dimension.
Another dimension. That's how I would see it anyway.
Yeah.
The astral plane.
So yeah. But yeah, that kind of travelling, time does not exist, and I can't quite get my head around that. For me, things are kind of not necessarily black and white, but
linear.
Linear, yeah. I can't get my head round. We're not just travelling forward. I know Anthony Peake has got some great ideas about that, but it's still very difficult to get your head round.
Oh, goodness,
but when you've experienced something like that, you go, I just cannot explain it in any other way. Yeah. So if I as a human am able to do that, then surely an angel who can, their very makeup is about being able to transcend and travel between heaven and earth, heaven and, loose terms, whatever you want to call the other side. Surely they can do it.
And hopefully they would be able to do it easier.
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the other points that was brought up in the chat room was regarding sex of the angels. I'm not talking that kind of sex. We're talking about male or female. I always thought they were like non-gendered.
They are
non-gendered. Is the word. They're going to be correcting me on that word as well in the chat room.
Probably a new PT, intergendered or something like that. I don't know.
They weren't necessarily male or female. They were just a being.
They're non-gendered, yeah. I think with the exception of Michael, who is generally regarded as being male.
I would say that they would have a more masculine or feminine energy.
Yeah,
That wouldn't necessarily make them male or female. I would think, in my opinion, for what it's worth, I would think that depending on how they work, would give them that energy of more masculine or feminine. Having said that, that does not make them male or female.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I think probably what muddies the issue a little bit is that our use of their names nowadays. So Michael is usually used for boys.
Yeah.
Raphael is usually used for boys. Gabriel can be used for either, really.
Yeah.
You know, maybe Gabriella.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And Uriel sounds quite feminine to me as well.
Yeah.
Ariel sounds quite feminine. So, yeah, I think that maybe muddies the water, but generally speaking, they are supposed to be non-gendered.
Yeah, see, that's how and I haven't had huge angel experiences, but when I have had that experience, it hasn't felt masculine or feminine. It's just been almost like that form of energy that has come in, depending on the situation that I was dealing with at the time. And on that note, let's take a little quick break.
Okay.
And we will be right back to continue this little discussion on
right.
angels.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Welcome back to the Spirit Dimension. I am Kerry Greenaway. I am joined by Alyson Dunlop in the studio, and we're talking everything angels tonight. Now, before the break, we talked about, whether they were multidimensional beings or whether or not they were, male or female. But I'd like to go on about our particular view of them. I mean, I have to say, when we talk angels, in my head, I've got the traditional viewpoint of them, long white robes, great big beautiful wings and all that sort of thing. And that I know has come from literature that I've seen over the years, and that personification that's put out to the general masses. So how have they appeared to you?
Well, both. Like the ancient demons and like the way they are sometimes drawn nowadays in art. One of my experiences where they didn't have wings took place in Kelvin Bridge in Glasgow. I was coming home from hospital. It was just a routine appointment. But the night before, an argument had erupted online, as these things do, and people had said things, people had got offended. I had this all in my mind, and I was quite, I wouldn't say maybe not anxious, but there was somebody that I didn't want to upset. But I was a bit worried about all this stuff. So all this was going through my head. Now, as I went down in the escalators, they take me to where I stay at Kelvin Bridge Underground. The door was opened by this very tall man. He's well over 6 feet tall. Probably, I would say, looked in his late 30s, middle to late 30s. He had black hair, and what caught me off guard was that he appeared not quite human. And I also felt like I knew him. I felt like I'd seen him somewhere before. And I was struck by how absolutely beautiful he was. Not in the way of like, oh, I really fancy that person, but just a real shining beauty from him. And I was also struck by the unusual way that he opened the door. He pushed it forward and stepped back. And I kind of stepped through. I probably muttered thanks. I can't really remember. And he just stared at me with this expression. I don't know if I would describe it as severe, but there was some kind of element of concern there. Like neutral concern. I know that sounds like a paradox, but that's what it was like. So I walked a few steps to my home, just still thinking about this guy and wondering what it was that I sensed off him. And when I got to my gate, I was once again astonished to find 3 angel cards lying on the ground outside my gate. I took them upstairs. I washed and dried them because it'd been raining. It was a bit muddy. And it started dawning on me why I felt that I recognised the man. Because during my Reiki initiation, this was a few years before, and I'd been asked to say if any of the archangels appeared. Now, 2 of them did appear to me in that deep meditative state. One was Raphael and one was Michael. And the man that I'd seen looked exactly how I'd pictured Raphael. And whether it's a coincidence or not, that Raphael is an angel of healing and travel. Mm-hmm. So I was coming back from a hospital and I met him at an underground, if that's the case. Now, the angel cards have been in German for some reason. So I did translate them. And the gist of it was that I was to accept each person as they are without judging them. And once I did that, there would be no resentment and no harm would come. To accept others as well as myself. Yeah. And this would, deal with the situation that was happening. And I was always to ask the angels for help. And they were assuring me that they would help my consciousness to be brought to a higher level. So that's the gist of the 3 cards. And it really helped the situation that I was dealing with. And so I guess ever since then, and ever since my other experiences, putting them all together, it made me want to look more at this subject of what people actually experienced and what these beings might be. Yeah. Again, I didn't consciously think, I hope an angel comes along and gives me an answer to this. Yeah. I didn't even put out the thought, angels help me. But there was what I perceive. Maybe it's got a lot to do with your perception. Maybe that just was an ordinary guy. And maybe it was a total coincidence that 3 angel cards that answered my question were right outside my gate. Okay, we can put all that down to coincidence or synchronicity or whatever.
And that's our logical heads kicking in.
And that's our logical heads kicking in, for all the scientists in the chat room. But what I perceive and what I take out of it is something different. And I think that's probably an individual thing that I'm entitled to believe, of course, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. But that was my perception. So when I'm investigating other things with people, particularly on the demonic side of things, I do try to bear that in mind, that what they are perceiving of a situation is perhaps not what I would. The point is, do they believe this? Is this affecting them? And so, again, with the angels, if somebody tells me a story, and the ones that I've related to you, I think are quite extraordinary. And these are 2 people that I know. I know them personally.
And that's the point, isn't it? When you know somebody personally and you know them on that personal level, you have that faith and that trust in.
Absolutely.
And also, when you have that conversation face to face with somebody, you're judging them on their body language, and you know them as a person, so you know that their tones of inflection in their voice. And half the time, when they're telling you about these things, they can't believe it themselves.
Yes, exactly. Because when I'm relating these experiences, and I'm thinking, this, this to some people who don't know me is going to sound very, very strange. Because it's not been their experience, and they will be busily trying to rationalise this.
And half the time they're telling you because they are trying to understand what that experience was.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be an angel, whether that be a paranormal experience, whether they're not, whatever, however that comes to you, particularly as we all work in the field, you get a lot of personal experiences talked to you, or told to you, so should I say, and they're looking for that answer of, was that an angel, or was that, my nan, or, whoever, whatever that situation was. On a personal experience, they're trying to make sense of that because they can't. And sometimes you can explain it, and other times you can go, isn't it a thing in law where they say there's only so much coincidence that can happen before, you know what I mean? It becomes not coincidental.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a thing in law, but you're probably right. I think it's very helpful to people to voice their experience, get it out. I met somebody actually at the conference. His name was Patrick, and he had an experience when he was a little boy. I don't know what age he is now, but he's certainly a more mature man. And he had taken a shortcut home by a river, cycling, and he had fallen into the river. And he couldn't really get out, and the water was coming over his face, and he really thought he was going to drown. And he heard this voice quite severely, I think, saying to him to get up, get out the water. It wasn't his time to die. Mm-hmm. And he did. He struggled. He put some effort into it and struggled out the water. And he thought that this was a human person saying this to him. And when he looked right and left, there was nobody there to say thank you. And he wondered. He said he's done a lot of charitable work in his life, helping others and things like that. And he said, I just wondered if this was an angelic experience, if that was why it wasn't my time to die, was because I had things to do. And so we sat and chatted, and afterwards he said, well, thank you very much. Do you know, I feel so much better having eventually told someone that. He hadn't told anyone his entire life about that experience. Oh. And now he was, I don't want to say elderly, I don't really know what age he was, but he was up in years, and this happened to him when he was a boy. He'd never told anybody. But you just saw his, this kind of relief from him from having told someone. Yeah. So that I thought was lovely. And it, showed me that this is a helpful thing for people to speak about it.
Oh, very much and so. I agree with that.
Yeah. And not be ridiculed.
Yes.
To be taken seriously, and somebody to say, I believe that was your experience.
Yeah.
Because I've had odd experiences.
Yeah.
So I believe what you're telling me.
Uh-huh. Oh, no, I completely agree. And like I said right at the beginning of the show, there are so many different classifications of where angels intervene, crisis angels, times of need, everyday angels, healing angels. I mean, we hear about angels in hospitals so many times.
Mm-hmm. Did I tell you about that one with me in the hospital?
I don't believe you did.
I don't think I did. So it was about 6 months after my second transplant, and I had to go back to the hospital. I had septicemia. So I was in a private room. It was next to the room that I'd been in before, and which was at a slight angle to the left of the door of the room that I was in. Mm-hmm. And after a few days, an old lady was admitted to the room next to me. And things were looking pretty bad for her. Family, I could see they were very upset, and they were taking turns to be with her during the night. And then one evening, round about 11 o'clock, I was lying in bed reading a book and looked up, and outside the old woman's door was a dark shadow. And I really did not like the feeling that I got about this. So I just watched it. And then, in between times, in the early hours, I saw family members again coming out the room, looked distraught. The doctors were telling them to expect the worst. And they were taking it in turns never to leave her alone. But whenever there wasn't anyone standing outside the door, I could see this shadow. And then it started to move. It started to move very, very slowly, creeping towards our room. And I just got this horrible feeling, and I was sure that it was there for this old woman. And I just felt utter horror that I was witnessing what I took to be a dark energy that was after a vulnerable elderly person. So, I just felt like I had to do something. And there was only one thing that I could think of to do, because this is, as I've said before many times, they have never let me down. To me, they're the most reliable forces, powers, paranormal powers, and the most reliable forces that I could think of at the time. Mm-hmm. So I just closed my eyes and I called upon the archangels, called upon Archangel Michael to protect the old woman, fight off whatever was coming to get her. Yeah. And I called upon Archangel Raphael, the angel of healing, to help her get better and stronger. And when I was sure that they were there, I demanded that this dark shadow retreat and leave her alone because she was under angelic protection. Well, I didn't actually say to leave her alone. I said something else, but we're live.
I think we could all imagine what you said.
Family show. Sometimes you need to use those kinds of words.
Sometimes going base is the only way to go.
Yeah. And I looked and the shadow retreated, and then I couldn't see it. Now, the next day, the old lady had a miraculous recovery. She was better than me. She was so much better that she was able to be moved into a ward with other people. Now, I'm not making any assumptions. I don't know what happened there. I can only say what I witnessed, what I experienced. But I did ask a nurse if she or any of her colleagues had ever, I told her the subject I was into. I didn't tell her what had happened though. But I said, has anybody ever experienced anything strange in the wards? And she pointed to the door where this thing had been from left to right and said, there's something out there. I'm convinced of it. And she said that sometimes she and the other nurses saw something passing out the corner of their eye. And she also said, you'd have loved it in here the other week. And she told me about a ward along to the right. An old man had been lying in bed one night, and the nurses were startled by screaming. And they ran to his aid to find out what he wanted, and he shouted that he was being pulled out of bed by his feet. So they calmed him down, gave him a cup of tea or whatever, got him back to sleep. And later on, a nurse went into the ward to check on him. And she was putting something in a cupboard when an invisible hand grasped her forearm. Now, I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't have seen that nurse for dust. So that was another strange thing that happened. That's in the Western Infirmary, which is no longer occupied. It's no longer used for wards. We've now got the new Southern General Hospital, the Queen Elizabeth. So I'm not sure what the plans for that hospital is now, but it'd be very interesting to... Yeah, I think I'm not sure. To be honest, I'm not sure. The university have taken it over. I think it was theirs to begin with, so they've taken it back. And they're going to be building something there. But it'd be interesting to find out if that entity ever reappeared, or if the angelic forces did do something and did stop whatever was happening. Yeah. Which obviously I hope that the second one's the case.
Well, I'm thinking if it's empty, get in there. That's what I'm thinking. Let's go and investigate that one.
whatever I need to find to do that. Yeah, I don't know.
That would be interesting. An interesting experience to go and just see whether or not you still get that same vibe. But then again, at that point in time, like you said, the old lady was at that point, and I don't know.
It was die, and I just felt like this thing was going to leech all the energy off of her. It was something very dark, very negative.
Because she was in such a vulnerable state at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to talk to you now a little bit about angel signs, because again, on the spiritual front, we hear an awful lot about, I saw a white feather, it's my angel, and, or I saw this and it's a sign from my angel. What's your take on signs? Because whenever I've had, well, I can't say I've had a sign from an angel like a feather, because I've always been going, well, there's ducks there. Or there's, I've always sort of...
Well, yeah, and there will be.
I don't tend to get signs.
Everywhere.
I'm a little bit too logical-minded, or a little bit dismissal, I suppose, is the expression.
Yeah. Again, maybe it's just what you take out of these things.
That's true.
I have, when I see a feather, I prefer to assume, shall we say, or I choose to believe that it's a present from an angel. One day I was coming in, there was one single feather right in the top step or right outside my front door, just as though it had been placed there. And it just made me smile. Doesn't matter whether it was a bird or, well, obviously it came from a bird, but, it didn't matter whether it was an angelic message, but it made me smile. And probably your English listeners, maybe even yourself, might not like this second story, but the morning of the Indie Ref, I was a yes supporter, and I was, gutted to say the least when I woke up the next morning. Anybody, I think, who was in the yes camp was thoroughly depressed, and in Glasgow particularly, there was a majority yes here. So from the upbeat vibes of the weeks before, I had to go and do I was reading for the blind at East Dunbartonshire Radio at the time, and so I had to get the underground and go out to the train station and get the train to East Dunbartonshire. Got in the underground and everybody's face was just, it was just, the atmosphere was just awful. And I was, honestly, by the time when I was in the train, I was almost in tears. And I get out the train station at Bishop Briggs, it is, and turned the corner, and I'm thinking, how am I going to be able to say these stories out on radio without bursting out crying? Because it was all going to be about Indie Ref and how, we weren't going to be independent. And so I walked round out the train station, and there was all these feathers in my path. And that was the point where I did burst out crying. Big lump in my throat. Those were very difficult to record. What do you call it? News items for the blind.
I can imagine. Although, speaking as an English person, I don't want you to be independent. I want you to stay firmly in the UK with us guys. We're all in it together. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I fully appreciate people who...
Now, can I tell you a little story that I got told? This was a medium. She was on her way to an event, and she was lost, hopelessly lost, and she was asking the angels to help her get to this event safely. And she's like, oh, please just send me a sign that I'm on the right road. And so... coming towards her, she's driving down the road, one single white feather comes and lands on her window screen, and she's like, oh God, thank you so much. I'm on the right road. Anyway, she went down the road a bit further. A couple more feathers landed on her window screen. By the time she got further down the road, she pulls up behind this like lorry, and it was full of chickens. And she's it's feathers upon feathers. So
and she was totally lost.
She was completely lost. No, she wasn't. So she's going, that's enough, thank you. I get it. I'm on the right road. And literally, as she said thank you, all these white feathers stopped. The lorry turned off, and she carried on and found her destination. And she was telling me about this. She goes, see, angels have a sense of humour too, you know.
They do. They do. And yeah, again, you could say synchronicity or whatever.
You could easily say that, but for her, that was just like everything. It was absolutely cracking up when she was telling me.
That's a really good story. I like that.
She even got to the point where she threw her sat nav out the window because it really wasn't helping. That's how lost this girl was. But as I say, you know, for her, she called on her angels. They certainly gave her the message. And as I say, she said the lorry turned off, and literally within 5 minutes I was at my destination. She goes, it was really strange. She goes, but yes, a truck full of chickens, white chickens at that. She goes, it wasn't even like they were like the normal kind of chickens. They were white. So it was all these white feathers coming at me. She goes, it was like a nightmare.
Doesn't have to be a white feather. Doesn't have to be a white feather. But yeah, you know, if that's what she got out of it, that's fantastic. I love that story. That's really good. Yeah.
I know, I have to say, we were chuckling away while she was telling me that, but I did love it. I did love it. And she asked for a sign. She certainly got her sign.
She certainly did. There's a lot of people ask the angels for parking spaces, talking about cars, and that seems to work as well. If you can't find a parking space.
This is the thing with angels. They do seem to be quite prevalent in regards to mundane stuff. They don't just come to you in times of like need and stuff like that. On the most mundane stuff, you can call on them. And they do seem to, whether or not it's synchronicity, whether or not it's just coincidence, whatever way you want to put it, it does seem to happen like that. And you hear account after account after account. Yeah.
Particularly Michael is known for helping with very practical things. So, like if you were looking for a parking space, and sometimes that can be quite an urgent thing. You need a parking space.
Yeah.
And so if you ask Michael, you'll soon find one. There was one day that I was going out to an investigation, and the person believed that they were under demonic attack. So I really needed to get there, and it had been cancelled once before, as these things quite often are. Quite often things stand in your way before you get out to something like this. Yeah. I mean, it's not just in, like, I don't know, is it Amityville or whatever. Weird things happen to investigators before they're going out. Yeah. And they can become ill, which was what happened with me. And it happened to the other investigators that I was going with. So it ended up that it was only going to be me. I didn't really like that idea. I don't like doing that. But, you know, so I was going out. My smoke alarm started. The battery ran down. There's nothing wrong with this battery. It was quite a new battery. The smoke alarm battery ran down suddenly. So, like, every however many seconds, this loud beep. Now, I've got 2 very sensitive cats who were going mental with this, and it was very unfair. It was very uncomfortable for their ears. They're quite good hearing cats. So I thought, I can't leave this. So I got up a ladder, and I get this? It's one of those, you just want to take a hammer to it, you know?
This and is I'm when you need a fireman to actually come and disarm the fire alarm.
Yeah. If any firemen want to come to my door, please, you know, that would be lovely. Wear your uniform.
Anyway,
I'm getting a bit flustered. Temperature's gone up, something rotten here. Anyway, so I'm thinking, what can I do? I had to like leave within like 10 minutes, and I did not know what to do. And I thought, I can't like not go to this house. So I thought, you know, I said, Michael, please help me with this. And I felt a bit daft saying it, but I just, you know, did. And I felt my head being moved round the side of this. And this is the kind of practical idea that I'm talking about. And it said something on the side like, I can't remember the exact word, and I'll go up and look later. But it was something like to jam a screwdriver in here. It was a direction.
Yeah.
It was a very direct direction, which is typically Michael. So get down the ladder and got a screwdriver, stabbed it in, and the smoke alarm came off, and I could take the battery out and put in a new one. So something like that, something very, very simple. You can just say, Michael, help me with this. And if you are sensitive, or you're looking out for the subtle signs, as I say, quite often if a spirit comes in the room, my head will be turned just automatically. It will just slowly turn. Now, I'm not doing that consciously. I can only think that some guide or other is turning my head. And that was what happened in that occasion. I can't really explain that, but that's how it works. If you listen to, I don't know, just the feelings that you get, and go with that, go with the flow.
No, I agree.
Shut off the rational part of your mind, even if it's just for a few seconds, and just count to 10. You can be rational again in 60 seconds, in a minute's time. But at that point in time, shut off the rational part of your brain and just go with the flow and believe in it.
Yeah.
And that's something that they've, maybe not so much to do with angels, but they have managed to do in test conditions, is that if you believe in something, it will happen. It will. You will get results. If you're a skeptic and you don't believe, you will not get results. Now, they have proved that under scientific conditions. Yeah. And Innes Smith's talk gets put on YouTube. He mentions this, the talk from the Scottish Conference. He explains a bit more about that, which I found fascinating, that this has actually been tested.
And manifestation and power of healing and all those kind of things are well known. Power of thought, power of just allowing it to roll. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Just go, right, okay, rational thought out the window just for a few seconds. Let's see if this works. And if under scientific conditions it can work, then it can sure as... it can sure work for you. That's my take.
No, I completely agree. I work in a lot of manifestation ways, not just for myself, but for other people. And if I truly want something or I truly believe something, it very, very rarely doesn't happen. Very rarely doesn't happen. One of my friends actually says, if we could bottle your powers of manifestation, it would be absolutely awesome. Having said that, I've yet to manifest Johnny Depp into my life. There's still time. There's still time, is all I can say. Anyway, on that note, my lovely, we have actually come to the end of the show.
Oh, it's been wonderful talking to you.
As always, it's an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you all for joining us in the chat room. It's been really interesting listening to watching all your comments are going through, and even some really bad jokes, James. Just putting that out there.
They're probably all saying she's nuts.
No, there's been a lot of personal experiences posted in the chat room.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, there's been some amazing things put in the chat room tonight. And so thank you all for joining us and joining in the discussion.
Yes,
I'm so sorry we haven't been able to cover everything that you've been saying. I'm going to tell Alyson all about your experiences after the show. Should do an after show party, really, Alyson, I think.
I'll go into the chat room and take a look.
Yeah, have a look, because there's been some experiences put in there.
Fabulous.
It's been an